My name is Liz Hutchinson. I work at IE University in graduate admissions. So my role is the head of admissions for graduate programs. So I'm in charge of admissions to all of our 5 schools. So you're probably most familiar with IE Business School, which is the longest up and running. But we also have a School of Architecture, we have a School of Global and Public Affairs, a law school. And so in addition to the business school, we have a lot of different graduate offerings, and I'm in charge of all graduate admissions. So I'm excited to be here and talk specifically about the MBA program. Yeah, so we have quite a few applications. We don't publish our application numbers in total, but we do have around 450 to 500 students annually. So that's across 2 intakes. So one of the interesting parts about the International MBA, which is the one that we're most known for and has been in the longest running, is that it's over 2 intakes. So there's a September intake and there's a January intake. I'm actually an alumnus as well. So I did the International MBA program when I was at IE. And I was part of the January intake. So it's a little bit smaller in the January program. Most of the students are accustomed to the typical academic year application cycle, but it is about 500 students across the 2 intakes. We are one of few schools that does really present themselves as a business and as a university. So that really starts from our entrepreneurial entrance into the market. So IE Business School started about 40 years ago by our founder, Diego, was actually an entrepreneur himself and wanted to found a school in Madrid that was English speaking that taught entrepreneurship. And it was really revolutionary at the time. And so that is really in our DNA to be very entrepreneurial and very business focused as a university. So it certainly is, to this day, has continued as part of our culture, where we're always trying to reinvent ourselves. We're always trying to stay attuned to market trends and make sure our degrees are really helping students learn what they need to learn for jobs in this century, in this time period. So I take it as quite a compliment that you think we are business minded, because yes, we are a business school at IU Business School, and such we run that way as well. So we have applicants who apply to programs within our business school. So one of the most popular would be the traditional international MBA program. So a lot of students have heard, or a lot of applicants have heard of that program in particular. It's also one of the well-ranked programs, but our global online MBA is also one of the highly ranked programs. So we're known for that one as well. But when students are applying to our programs, they often have a career vision in mind. We're actually launching a new campaign this summer, which I won't spill the beans about, but we're becoming more and more career focused. That's something that's really unique to IE, to be so career oriented. But essentially, we do admit students to a program. But one of the fantastic parts about IE Business School in particular is that when you inquire about an interest area or a field, a pathway, for instance, I really want to study human resources, I want to work in HR, but I'm not exactly sure where, and I'm not exactly sure which role. We have a team here in the Madrid office whose entire role it is to consult with you and help you understand which program is actually right for you. So it's a very unique structure at IE, where when you call up admissions and when you're talking with us, there's a whole team who's here to help you find the right program, rather than trying to have everyone apply to the same program with all of these different interests. So it's one of the many reasons I am a very proud alumnus, is because when you come and you reach out and you're saying, generally I'd love to work in HR, but I'm not exactly sure where, you can discuss it with one of the colleagues on my team and have a very individualized discussion, and then realize, oh, okay, actually, no, I really think I want to do a master's in communications rather than the international MBA program, because my interests are much more specific. So we have those conversations with you prior to the program, and then you apply to that individual program instead. It's sort of a subsection of our admissions department, but there is that advisory component to a number of our team. So we definitely have an admissions department, and that's the program part that I oversee, which is who should be in which program and sort of upholding the standards of our university. But yes, we have a consultative team that is here to help, and that's separate from admissions, but it's one of the reasons I really like working at IE is because a lot of schools don't have that as part of their applicant process. And so sometimes you end up applying to a program that's not a great fit for your career. And so I think we're really unique in that way in having that structure. It's an interesting mix of both. So you'll always come into counter. I mean, I was one of those students when I was applying, I knew exactly what I wanted. I knew it was the MBA program. I specifically wanted IE because it is located in Madrid. It's one of the only programs where you can do the program both in English and in Spanish. There's a bilingual track. I wanted the program because it's heavily entrepreneurial. I liked its focus on sustainability. So for all these reasons, I actually only wanted to do the IE MBA program at IE. So we always have a number of students just like that who are applying to the exact program that they're interested in. But we want to be open to the students who are really exploring, because an MBA degree can be very general, right? It's a general business management degree. And so there might be a lot of students or potential students who don't exactly know where they want to fall. And so for that reason, we have the advisory team to make sure you're applying to the right program. Because at the end of the day, education is meant to be about helping you with your trajectory, right? And so if we're just helping you into the funnel for a program that's not a good fit, then we need to be doing a better job. So. The process certainly depends on which program you're applying to. So as I mentioned, I oversee admissions to all 5 of our graduate schools. So it's a little bit different at each, but in the business school, once you apply, then you will be asked to do an in-person interview. So in-person, online in this case, because we're still at the tail end of the pandemic, but a one-to-one interview with our team. Once that is in place, we review your application and we do holistic application reading. So much like many schools, we're looking at many components of your materials that you've submitted. We're looking at your transcripts, of course, perhaps a GMAT or GRE score. We also have the ieGAT, which I'm happy to talk more about, which is our own admissions examination. But we look at all of these different things alongside the interview notes, and we decide on entrance into the program. In regards to the committee that you asked about specifically, we don't mention who's on the committee, but it's all members of the admissions team. So the admissions team is reviewing your files and deciding if you are a good fit for the program. One of the wonderful parts about IE is we're a rolling admissions department, and so you can apply throughout the year and you usually get a decision within 3 to 4 weeks. So we have students who are a year out who know exactly what they want, and 12 months in advance they're applying. And then of course we have some who choose to apply in 2 to 3 months before a program starts. And if there's room in the class and they're a really strong profile, sometimes it still works out for them too. So. In our efforts to always be very entrepreneurial, we started the ieGAT quite a few years ago. So we've always been somewhat flexible in our testing requirements. So it's nice to see that other schools are getting on the bandwagon and being more flexible about testing. But we actually started this many, many years ago. We created our own examination to try and understand which students would be a good fit for our programs. So one of the wonderful parts, I keep saying there's wonderful parts, but as an alumnus, I'm highly biased. There's lots of wonderful parts about IE, but specifically in terms of the ieGAT, it's pretty special because you don't have to do any sort of test preparation for the ieGAT. I actually took the ieGAT when I was applying in 2016. So it's of course always revised. We are an entrepreneurial focused school, and so we're always trying to make improvements. But there was a form of the ieGAT that I actually took when I was applying to IE, and I loved it because as a full-time employee, I didn't have time to study for the GMAT or GRE, nor did I have a few hours on a Saturday to go in person to a certain location somewhere far away from my home to take the examination, right? And so I found it really helpful when I was an applicant to have the ability to be flexible, but still show that I had strong quantitative skills, to still have a way to show that I was a very logical thinker and I could do a strong performance in a quantitative heavy program like an international MBA, especially because I came from the humanities. So it was really important to prove those quant skills. So the ieGAT was a wonderful addition to the application in which I could show those quantitative skills, but I didn't have to study for 3 to 6 months to try and take an examination on a very specific time frame. So it's much more flexible. You don't have to study, and it's a lot more like playing a game than it is like taking an examination. So if you're one of those people like me who's incredibly nerdy and likes to do sort of quiz games on your free time, it will feel very fun and not like an examination, like not the traditional sense anyway. You'll notice that the GMAT and GRE are heavily things that you've learned in the past, like algebra. I think they study trigonometry. There's lots of graphs and formulas that you have to use that you've memorized from the past. This is really meant to be an examination that's quite flexible, that helps us in understanding your ability to process information quickly, to understand and read data, numerical literacy, essentially, and all those things you can learn and understand without necessarily having memorized 5 or 6 different algebraic equations, right? So IE really wants to understand who you are as an applicant in whichever way you information, and so it's just a much more flexible test. The ieGAT specifically, it lasts about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours max, and that's including the instructions and practice time. So you have one practice example for each of the parts of the exam, so you can understand how the examination works, right? You are required to connect at a specific time. So they are proctored mostly by the admission staff here, but they're actually offered quite frequently. 3 to 4 times a week we offer them. So it's very flexible and much more flexible than perhaps other examinations that you're accustomed to. So they're offered 3 to 4 times a week. It's about an hour and a half to 2 hours to take them. They're proxied by our team, and they start at a specific time on those days. And we offer them in multiple different time zones too. So the Saturday session might be at 10 a.m., but then we might do a Thursday 8 p.m. session because of course we have applicants all over the world. In terms of the price, which you specifically mentioned, it's free, right? So this is another barrier that we try and remove from the process. So it's free to take. If you apply to IE, it's part of the process. So there is an application fee to apply to IE, and so you'd have to pay the application fee, but there's no additional price to take the ieGAT. So you don't get the scores from the score report, especially because they wouldn't mean anything to you, right? There's no chart in which to understand exactly what an ieGAT number means externally. So we don't send scores to any of the applicants. But no, you can't fail it. It's not a pass-fail examination. It just helps us to understand applicants on a spectrum, and how strong are your quantitative skills, how strong are your information processing skills versus the other applicants to our programs. So there's no failing, but certainly those scores are taken into account when we are reviewing applicants holistically. So alongside the essay, alongside the interview, etc. In terms of does everyone get an interview? No, not everyone is selected to do the interview. It is part of our process, and it's a little further into the application process. So if you start an application for the International MBA program specifically, you'll fill out some demographic information. You might upload a personal statement or video. There is a Kira assessment. So we use Kira, which is, you might be familiar with. It's a style of interviewing that is recorded and sent to us. So it's sort of a first pass at the interview where we get to understand a little bit more about why you're interested in this MBA program. And we ask you some questions from a number of questions from a list, and we review your responses. Then there is an additional one-to-one interview as part of this process, and no, not everyone is selected for the interview. We don't share how many those are selected for the interview process, but not everyone is. And then after the interview, that is taken into account, and then we give out an admissions decision. So usually it's about a week or two after the interview that we're able to make a decision. So it's always a wonderful opportunity to really understand an applicant outside of their written components or their demographic components that they've already shared with the team. So in the interview itself, it's highly dependent on the applicant, of course, because if your Kira interview and your personal essay were all about your career goals, we might ask you about your past experiences, right? It really tends to be a little bit more information from what's missing from the rest of your application, right? It's always an opportunity to be additive. So if you talked heavily about your past experiences working in the interview and Kira interview and with the personal statement, for instance, then we might want to know some situational behaviors. How would you respond to this? Or what current events are you following? It really depends heavily on the applicant because it's really a way in which to fill in the gaps from the application and understand, can this person really interact in the case method and contribute to our cohort? Well, because there's so many alumni within our staff ranks, I think we all feel a personal connection to the university and really want to see it succeed. I can certainly put myself in that bucket. I loved my experience at IE. It was one of the best years of my life. And so I'm able to speak with more passion and authenticity when I'm talking about the program. I think that's really important. But it also unifies us, right? It's a shared experience. And it's a shared set of values, right? IE is all about diversity. We have over 130 countries represented on campus between the tower and here in Maria de Molina, which is where the graduate programs are housed. So this really rich cultural diversity is one of the pillars of the IE program. As I've mentioned before, we're very entrepreneurial. When I was applying to IE, I talked a lot about starting my own music company. So lots of people have really passionate and interesting outside interests or outside hobbies that are starting on the side. There's this focus on sustainability. So all of these sort of shared morals that we have embedded into the programs also unify our staff. So I find it to be a wonderfully motivating place to work because everyone has this shared sense of interest in getting to know other cultures, interest in international perspectives, and of course the core interest in business here at the business school. So I was a December 2017 graduate, so it's been just a couple of years since I graduated from the program. I've really been excited to see the growth of the undergraduate school. So in our entrepreneurial spirit, there was in about 2002, I believe, they started an undergraduate program. And so that has grown quite heavily. And that is actually larger than the graduate programs right now. The graduate programs are very specialized, which is wonderful, and what masters really should be, right? You should be specializing in trying to get a specific career or really understand a specific area of interest. And so watching it grow has been a point of pride for me as an alumnus, and seeing that there really is this thirst in the world for education that is culturally diverse and perhaps multimodal. We have a lot of wonderful and interesting ways in which we have experienced technology in the classroom. So the GOMBA, the Global Online MBA program, top ranked in the world, that's been in existence for many years. We actually started online education 20 years ago. So that was way before other schools were even thinking about going online. And so we've, in the pandemic, had the seamless transition into liquid learning in which students can be home, students can be in the classroom, and they can interact easily with each other, which has been wonderful during the pandemic because we didn't really have to change that much about our model. But mostly it's just a point of pride in seeing how all of these small things have grown over time, and seeing how many applicants are really attracted to that cultural diversity, to that interest in sustainability, all of those morals. To see that there's really a thirst out there in the world for those perspectives is very affirming.